ESPN.com. And the True Hoop Network has listed its top 5 players in the NBA. No surprise, LeBron James is at 1, Kevin Durant at 2, Chris Paul 3, James Harden 4, and 5th is Russell Westbrook. We're putting ESPN.com on the hook. We asked this question. Stephen A. Smith, you have a lot of information on this. Does Kevin Durant belong at the 2 spot?
Yes, he does. Thought about it long and hard.
Okay.
I think here's the bottom line. Here's the biggest problem with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is playing around the same time as LeBron James. It's almost a shame. I had the pleasure of speaking with former, NBA coach, now an analyst for the family, PJ Carlissimo. We know what a great basketball mind he's been throughout the last several decades. It's an honor to always talk to him. And he brought that point up. Kevin Durant is surreal. He's big time. He's on another level. Matter of fact, he coached Kevin Durant's first year in the league. I just look at a guy like a Kevin Durant and his ability to score the ball. He's long. He's about 6'10", got a wingspan that makes him about 7'5", 7'6", can pull up from 30, can handle the rock. He's a scoring machine. He's had his lulls, no doubt, particularly adjusting to life in the postseason once Russell Westbrook went down, and we all saw how that panned out. But in the end, what it comes down to is that this dude is legit. He's a matchup problem defensively as well because he's so long in any of the first 3 positions, your point guard, shooting guard, small forward spot, he can defend those guys. Plus, he can defend power forwards, clearly not in the low post, but most other places on the court, so because he's so long. So when you consider what he brings, the professionalism, along with his surreal abilities offensively, I don't think it can be denied that he's the second best player in the game of basketball. You just wish he would be more assertive and more aggressive and not leave that particular element in his personality to a Russell Westbrook. But skill-wise and what he brings to the table, I think it's clear that Kevin Durant is number 2.
And I don't think it is, Stephen A. I also thought long and hard about this. And the harder I thought, the bigger the gap got between LeBron James at number 1 and whoever is number 2. It's a tough one, but it's a distant second. And you know what I keep bringing up, Stephen A., and the reason this sticks in my craw, the reason I can't give Kevin Durant the second slot is because of what he didn't do in the first round against the same Memphis Grizzlies who got swept by my Spurs. As you remember, the Thunder, without Russell Westbrook, lost 4 straight to the Memphis Grizzlies. And you know the numbers. I'm going to give them to you one more time. In those clutch time moments, the last 5 minutes of fourth quarters or overtimes in those 4 games, Kevin Durant really disappointed me. He went 2 for 15. He went 0 for 3 from 3. He missed 3 out of 5 free throws, which really shook me up because we know he's a 90% free throw shooter. So in 20 total minutes of clutch time, last 5 minutes of those 4 games, Kevin Durant, who used to be my favorite player, totaled 6 points. That's not good enough to me to rank second on this list. If you want to go ahead and elevate Russell Westbrook, who did not play in the playoffs last year after the first of the Houston series, obviously, if you want to elevate him to number 2, I got no problem because I came to the conclusion last year, maybe Russell Westbrook, maybe I was wrong all along. Maybe he was Batman on that team. Maybe he made Kevin Durant go. But, Stephen A., I'm going to throw one last curveball at you. I hung in all last year. My MVP was Tony Parker. He ranks 12th on this list. He finally pulled his hamstring, February 29th, and fell out of the MVP race. I think he at least deserves some consideration for second best player in this league because he did put his Spurs in position to win Game 6 at Miami. I don't want to get off on what happened. Thank you very much, Ray Allen, for what you did to my Spurs. But thanks in large part to Tony Parker, Spurs were in position to win the NBA championship. So I could make a case for him at number 2.
First of all, I totally disagree with you, and here's why. Number one, Tony Parker, you're absolutely right about how big time he is. All due respect to him, but there are limitations because of his miniature size. He's cat quick. He knows how to run the point. He's a surreal player. If you want to make the argument that he could be put above Chris Paul, I get that. I understand it, even though I love me some Chris Paul. But Tony Parker's been to the NBA Finals. Chris Paul is not. Tony Parker's won championships. Chris Paul is not. So I get that, even though Chris Paul is still an elite player. And I think the ultimate floor general, and I think he's big time. But the thing about it is when you're miniature, like a Tony Parker, you suddenly have your limitations. What did the Miami Heat do? There were times when we saw LeBron James and others on Tony Parker, and all of a sudden he was neutralized. The only thing that neutralizes Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. There's nobody that can stop Kevin Durant. There's nobody that can neutralize Kevin Durant. It's just that Kevin Durant doesn't mind deferring, doesn't mind leaning on somebody else. So it's a personality issue similar to what we accused LeBron James of having in the past. It wasn't about his abilities and what he couldn't do. And clearly that's the case with Kevin Durant because LeBron James was struggling with the perimeter shot. Ultimately, he improved his perimeter shots. He needs to improve on his free-throw shooting next, which I think he will do, and he has continued to do, to give him credit for that. But there's a process of elevation that has taken place with LeBron James as it pertains to his game. You look at Kevin Durant, there's nothing about his game that we look at and say this is a clear deficiency outside of his mental makeup, his unwillingness to be aggressive and to have that killer instincts. He's hit game-winning shots. He can pull up from 30, from 20. He can hit it from 10. He can roll. He can score on a fast break. He's shooting almost 90% from the free throw line. This boy doesn't have a weakness offensively outside of his skinny frame. That is about it. So when you look at a Kevin Durant and then you choose to pick the 4 games that he didn't show up against Memphis, I choose to look at his career numbers. 26, 6, and 6 in the regular season on 47% shooting from the field, 37% shooting from three-point range. In the postseason is 28, 7, and 7 on 46% shooting. This dude is big time. Now the issue again is the mental makeup when it comes to aggression. But in the end, what we're saying is what's holding Kevin Durant back is Kevin Durant in terms of his assertiveness. That's about it. And if that's the only thing that's holding you back, then to me, why should you play second fiddle to anyone outside of LeBron James?
Yeah. Are you sure he's better than his little running buddy, Westbrook?
Yes, but his little running buddy, Westbrook, has a killer instinct. I'm just saying, if you have a killer, if you have the killer instinct, time out, listen and learn. If you have a killer instinct, that doesn't make you better. It just means that you have the killer instinct. But it doesn't make you better. There's a lot of guys with a killer instinct, but it doesn't make them better. You weren't saying that when Russell Westbrook was hitting 42% from the field and Kevin Durant was shooting 51% from the field. You pointed to efficiency. So how do you then change the argument to an issue of killer instinct? We always knew that Russell Westbrook had more of a killer instinct than Kevin Durant. We just realized how profoundly needed it is come postseason time in order for Oklahoma City to get over the hump. Russell Westbrook is big time. I've been telling you that for years. You just started listening. But don't act like that suddenly makes him better than Kevin Durant. Because if you do, then I'm going to accuse you of something you have religiously and categorically denied throughout your professional career, and that is of smoking something.
I don't smoke, never have, never will. Anything. Okay, here's the point. Russell Westbrook has proven to me that he is definitely mentally tougher than Kevin Durant because I got to see Durant try to operate without him. Do I think they're a good match? Do I think they're a good fit together? I do not. I think that will hamstring them ultimately because it's two big egos who try to share a basketball that Russell Westbrook gets to pick and choose who gets to shoot because he is the man who dribbles the ball up the floor every time. So, Stephen A., I am here admitting I am wrong. I have been wrong about Kevin Durant, which is why I cannot find it in my heart or my soul to elevate him to number 2 on this list. I'm sorry. I'm saying you got me.
Well, But the point that I'm trying to make to you is that if you can't elevate him to number 2 on the list, then you have to have somebody more concrete. And it can't just be somebody that you have spent years acknowledging wasn't as good, but you're going to leapfrog him over his teammate just because he has the killer instinct. You can have the killer instinct, but not have the ability to execute it. That doesn't matter. Kevin Durant's problem is knowing when to be assertive, being willing to take over no matter what anybody thinks or says. That is it. But in terms of what he brings to the table, there is nobody in the NBA outside of LeBron or Carmelo Anthony who has the offensive arsenal that Kevin Durant has. Nobody. It's just a fact.
We're talking about who's more valuable in a vacuum outside of their team. And I have been trying to tell you since Kevin Durant was a freshman at the University of Texas that he's all those things you're talking about. I called it way early. I said he will lead the NBA in scoring multiple times. I did.
Who didn't know that? He was 6'10" with a jumper from 30, Skip. Everyone knew this. Everyone. Don't act like you. Now, this is not a Tebow situation here where you saw it before everybody else. Everyone saw Kevin Durant coming. He was a high school All-American. He was an All-American in college, okay, as a freshman. This dude was legitimate. Coming into the pros, he was number 2. He was going to be number 1. The only reason he wasn't number 1 was because Greg Oden was 7 feet, and you can't teach 7 feet. That was it. Everyone saw Kevin Durant coming. That is a lie, Skip. Everyone saw Kevin Durant coming.
It is not a lie, Stephen A. Smith. You don't watch college as much as I do. Trust me on this.
Yes,
I'm going back to the days of cold pizza. Nope, sorry. I'm not going to give you this one. Many doubts.
Ask a question.
Many doubts about Kevin Durant in college. Too skinny, not aggressive enough. They got bounced in the first round, or it was the second round, the second game of the tournament. And a lot of people had big negatives on Kevin Durant. I had none. I said this, I've told you for years, this guy's it. He's my favorite player until last year's playoffs. And I saw the light, minus Russell Westbrook.
Skip, the critique against Kevin Durant was the issue of his assertiveness and the fact that he was skinny. He was a clear top 2 pick in the NBA, and the only debate was, does Portland take him number 1 or Greg Oden? Because Greg Oden was coming out of Ohio State, fresh off a trip to the national championship game, playing with Mike Conley as his point guard, and you don't teach 7 feet, and Greg Oden was perceived as being potentially the second coming of Bill Russell. That is a fact. They looked at Kevin Durant and they said the skills and the offensive repertoire that this boy brings to the table is surreal. It's unlike, it was comparable to George Iceman Gervin. How do I know this? Because not only were they saying it, not only was I writing it and saying it, I spoke to the Iceman live in my interview where he told me that personally, and then Kevin Durant comes into the league and takes it by storm. I watch my college basketball, bro, and I'm here to tell you right now, Kevin Durant was head and shoulders above anybody on the collegiate level. He was big time. There was no debate. There was no epiphany that Skip Bayless exposed us all to, talking about, oh, watch this guy. Y'all don't know, but I know. Everybody knew about Kevin Durant. Everybody.
Gentlemen.
That is just a flat-out lie.
Let me tell you something, bro. Here's what happened. Early in that year, in December of that year, I said on the old days of cold pizza, I would take Kevin Durant over Greg Oden. And people howled at me. They thought I was out of my mind. They accused me of smoking something. And I hung in the whole year saying, nope, I would take him number 1. I'm sorry. He's too good. And I'm sorry to you. There were many detractors. You're doing revisionist history here because all that year there was much negativity about Kevin Durant.
Skip, that's not negativity. That's them saying, excuse me, he might not be number 1 because we have this one dude in Greg Oden who's a 7-footer that could be the second coming of Bill Russell. You said before you went into this little soliloquy, you said a few minutes ago that nobody saw Kevin Durant. It was that not seeing Kevin Durant is entirely different than thinking he'll be number 2. Time out. That is entirely different than not seeing him number 1 ahead of Greg Oden, which he wasn't. That's all it is. That's not noticing Kevin Durant or not recognizing his skill. It's saying you don't teach big. Patrick, excuse me, Skip, Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon was picked ahead of Michael Jordan. Now, Portland shouldn't have picked Sam Bowie, but nobody in Houston argued with Hakeem a Dream Olajuwon being picked ahead of Michael Jordan. You know why? Because you don't teach big. You either have it as God-given. It's big. You're 6'10", you're 6'11", you're 7 feet. That's the way it goes.
Gentlemen, we got to wrap it up.
Please.
Please. We can do this later.
Nobody
and I'm going
saw
to
Kevin
borrow
Durant. Stop.
Skip Bayless's term of
This
bro.
ain't finished.
This is not finished. You are correct about that, Mr. Bayless. But what we need to talk about now